Welcome to the Fearless Homeschool Podcast with Macaulay, talking everything homeschooling, family, learning and life. A space where we can learn and grow together because
why do it alone?
Welcome to another week of the Fearless Homeschool Podcast. In this two-part chat, Patricia Fitzgerald, a seasoned homeschooling mum from the Southeast of Queensland, shares her journey from traditional school to homeschooling. Patricia talks about how she transitioned her kids through distance education and finally settled for homeschooling, finding it the best fit for her family. She chats about experimenting with different educational approaches like unschooling, co-ops, and unit studies. Patricia also highlights her favourite resources. She dives into how she balances structure and subjects with more flexible, interest-led learning. Patricia emphasises how important it has been for her to adapt to fit her kids' needs. Tune in for some great insights and advice, particularly on unit studies working for your family. Hello and welcome back to the Fearless Homeschool Podcast. And this week we are chatting to the beautiful Patricia Fitzgerald. If you have been in the Fearless Homeschool world at any of the summits, you would have seen her face on many of our panels or workshops. Patricia is a homeschooling mum of two. She is one half of the Free to Homeschool and whole of Fitz Learning. And I'm very excited to hear about a bit about Patricia's story and also look at the different philosophies she's drawn on during her homeschooling journey. So welcome, Patricia.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Not a problem. So the first question we ask everyone, Patricia, is a little bit about you, however much you want to share, and what drew your family to homeschooling?
Okay, so I live in Southeast Queensland. We started off homeschooling 2 children, but currently I'm down to 1. So 1 has graduated now and he's in uni. So first up, when we started in school. We didn't even know homeschooling existed, didn't know it was a thing, had no idea at all. We attempted school for about 2 years, but it was completely falling apart. So after that, we actually spoke to the guidance counsellor and decided that we would go and try distance ed. So that was our first step into homeschooling. When we did distance ed, it was actually a really good fit for the structure and the routine and everything. That's what my eldest really needed. But the academics was not quite there. And it wasn't enough. It wasn't deep enough. It wasn't enriching enough. So we ended up jumping back into school for a bit before deciding to just pull the pin all together for both kids and went straight to homeschooling for that second time. And we have not returned. So that was kind of the last time that we ever did school, and we are down to our last, just over 18 months left of my daughter's registration now.
Total opposite end to me, basically.
Pretty much, nearly finished. It's a whole new world.
And so, distance ed into homeschooling, and what were your main philosophies or approaches of homeschooling that you were first drawn to when you first came out? Because we know that there's a journey that happens throughout, but what were those first ones?
So initially, we just wanted to try and feed the academics, and that's where we were feeling lost in anything that we'd done before. We weren't getting it in school. We weren't getting it in distance ed. We just needed to find somewhere that my kids could learn. They were craving it and they weren't getting that fulfilled anywhere else. So we started off just by exploring and nutting out some goals that we wanted to do together and some topics that they were interested in. So what we did was we drafted up some paper and each of us got to pick a topic. And that's where we began. We would learn about that topic and we would just rotate through them, whether it was something that we would do parallel to each other at the same time or whether it was something that we just did one at a time so that we could delve deeper into it. I wasn't really too involved in a lot of the philosophies. Like I didn't come out and register going, we're going to be an unschooler, we're going to do Charlotte Mason, we're going, like, I wasn't like that. It was just, what's going to work and what do we need? And that sort of led into where we ended up going with everything.
Yeah, nice. And it's such a different story again, because for you, they were needing the academics. They weren't getting enough of the academics that they required or the way they required, which is a different story to what we've heard so far for a lot of people. How do those discussions go with your kids? Like, how are they showing you that this was not enough for them in terms of academics? It's so interesting to me.
Oh, when they were in school, so one of my kids, he would actually take extra materials to do alongside what was offered in school because it wasn't stimulating enough. He's my only child that has done the NAPLAN test and only did it that one time. He actually took some Harry Potter books in to the tests because he knew that he was going to get bored. So he spent 20 minutes doing the testing and then the rest of the entire block reading his books.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, he was completely disengaged with what they were offering. He was actually offered higher level, so we did get grade skip content approved, but not the actual full grade skip into a new classroom approved. So he was given the content on a memory stick to work at his own pace. And then my other child was more just disengaged and not participating really, more than anything.
Okay.
She was just there to be there with nothing really happening.
Yep. Yep. And how did you stumble upon you've said that you went and sort of sat down and said, look, what are we interested in? Let's delve into these topics. How did you stumble on or delve deeper into doing that? So how did that sort of blossom once you started that?
Well, first up, we just sort of noted down some topics that we wanted to do. And I went researching in my own time, trying to find resources or activities or hands-on or excursions, depending on what it was, really. I remember like one of the first things that we did coming out of school was a lap book about rainbow lorikeets. Because that's what my daughter wanted to learn about. So we did this whole lap book about rainbow lorikeets.
How cool is that? And in terms of, because how old was your daughter at the time?
She would have only been about 5 or 6, I think.
Yeah. So these not project-based, they're more unit studies, but these sort of deep dives that you did, for someone that's 6 versus now, however old she is, how did you approach that? Like you said, you went and looked for research, you went and looked for topics. How much was it sort of encouraged by you versus what it is now?
So back then, like we still do have some say in like sitting down and discussing what topics we're going to do. But I think back then we were just beginning. We were just kind of reaching at whatever we could find of interest to get us by for a bit while we were finding our feet, really. Because when we jumped out of school, it was quite sudden. It was unexpected. It wasn't planned. It was basically like drop my kids off at school one day, come home to something I never would have expected to find being sent to me from a school or the department, to go and pick my kids up and go, I'm done, cancel it, that's it, same day. Like, that's where we were at. So I think at first it was like, all right, let's do a bit of this, let's do a bit of that, let's just dabble, just explore. Because I had done the distance ed previously, I was already in the homeschooling community, so that did give me like a heads up there. That gave me some additional resources and some access to things. But like until that point, I had just been floating about over that trial period where we tried to go back into school. So when I jumped out, it wasn't hard for me to do. I was already in the community. It was just about feeding what they were wanting whilst trying to find my feet at the same time. So I was trying to do both things at once. Whereas now that we've kind of settled, we've spent many years going over various things. We have changed our curriculum a couple of times over the years. But now I think we just kind of try and block it together, and we create a flow of different topics that roll from each other. So we try and, math is pretty easy. You just go with the flow, next level in math, add a bit more. But when it comes to English, I think we spend a lot of time doing handwriting, vocab, obviously the reading and writing with the younger one. The older one had already had that before we started. And we did a lot of more reading and not so much writing for many years. So we've only just started to pick up writing in the last few years, I think, not heaps before that. And then the other ones, it's just been about, we'll go ancient Egypt and we might spend 6 months on ancient Egypt and just try and explore a whole range of various things across that whole area, but not just in Egypt itself, also exploring how Egypt connected with the world around them, as well as, the environment and everything too. So I think because we had that basis, like ancient Egypt was one of the first things that we did study. When you're looking at your chronological order, it's quite easy to pick that one up. We have kind of just rolled on from there. We might jump ahead a little bit, do something like later on, and then jump back if there's something of interest or something that links up with other things, especially when we've done stuff like artist studies or a science topic that might be something around, the 1800s or the 1900s more specifically, and the scientists that were living then and discovering then. But yeah, I think now we have more of a flow, and it's just, okay, well, this one we haven't done yet, and looking at the next topic. So this one we haven't done yet, let's do that one. Rather than going, okay, where do we go from here? What do you want to do from here? And yeah, so we've got a bit more of a flow now.
And that's cool. So many questions now from what you just said. So one, I love the fact that I would suggest that knowing you already, Patricia, and because your kids were thirsty for it, you're quite academic as a homeschooling family. That is something that you do put as one of your pillars, I think, for your homeschooling. And even so, your daughter, you've just sort of said your daughter only started really writing 2 years ago. And it's understanding, I think one of the first things as homeschoolers that we have to start understanding is that writing doesn't mean learning. That just because you write about something isn't the only way to show you've learnt it. Could you delve deeper into kind of that side of things, considering your daughter really didn't write heaps until recently?
I think with her, it was more just a bit of the flow of how we were doing everything. So yeah, the lack of writing that we included was actually because my eldest has dysgraphia. So writing was a really difficult task for him. Yeah. So we incorporated typing very early, like within the first few months of starting homeschooling, possibly even earlier for him. So with that, we worked on a lot of, OT strategies to try and build the skills rather than actually writing. And we did a lot of handwriting, taking it slow with that. And a lot of our other stuff came from discussions, cut and paste, hands-on activities, going out places. We would do the things instead of write the things. But now as she's gotten older, she's actually wanting to do the writing and not do the cutting and pasting. It's for obvious reasons.
That's cool. No, but I think it's really interesting because I think one thing that we do, especially if you've come out of school system and so you've got that experience, is that we want proof, but we throw this much writing at our kids, and cognitive load wise, if you unpack what you're asking the kids to do, because writing is only one little part of it, right? You're also asking them to research, form sentences, and it's a lot to ask. Unless they're very keen on it, it's a lot to ask. Like my 8-year-old son, it's not his favorite thing to do. And so that's really hard for him to unpack all those tasks. There's so many tasks happening for that one thing that you're asking them to do.
Yeah, well, we have worked on, sentence structuring when, they're probably like 10 and 12 maybe, or 9 and 11. Like we've worked on bits and pieces. We've always worked on a lot of grammar. So we've actually incorporated a lot of grammar over the years so that I can make sure when it came time to implement a lot more writing, they had all those skills already there and they could piece them together a lot easier. So we've been doing your punctuation, we've been doing how to use commas and quotations, we've been doing all your different parts of speech and your parts of sentence and everything else. So working on understanding what a clause is so that they can understand how to use your punctuation correctly around those. But we haven't done it where we've had massive research, topics. We've done the stories here and there that they might write, little reports every now and then, but I'm talking like once or twice a year, maybe.
You're
And most of them would be
making me feel
typed
so
and not
good.
written.
Yeah. No, you're making it's. I feel like the biggest part we need to understand is what shows learning, and for you, you were able to encompass it in what we would suggest is unit studies. Basically, is how you flowed, and early on you did it just to get your feet. So, in terms of that, with your younger kids, what was your expectation of what they produced or how they showed you they had learnt around a unit topic? So, in the earlier days.
Oh, it depended on what it was, but it was probably more. My philosophy is if you can teach it, you understand it. So I often use that. So we were lucky enough, my older one, I could go, right, your sister's having trouble with this math problem. Go teach it to her. You know this. And that would show me that he understood it enough that he could teach her, as well as, with reading and everything as well. And spelling, like he's really good at spelling, where that has been something that she's struggled with. And then when it's come to her being the youngest, we've had like friends' kids or cousins where she's been able to pass that on and show us in that way. Or even more recently, she was actually able to help her dad now that he's restarted his diploma with the math units, and actually taught him some tricks to simplify some ways of doing things that he had never realized.
That's so cute. And I think understanding that that's not happening straight after she's learnt it, but eventually you're seeing that she has and is able to put that into practice, and it's not that constant instant feedback all the time.
Yeah, I definitely value input over output. So I like to give the kids lots rather than expect them to produce. I don't feel like them producing is the most valuable use of time when they could be learning so much more. And I feel like the output is just hindering the learning side.
Yeah, so good. How did you get comfortable with that? Were you already really comfortable with that as soon as
Yes.
you got out of school?
That was something from well before. That was something from when I was in school.
Yeah, okay, cool. There you go. Because I do think, again, that's something that people early on trip up on, that the expectation of, and I know that being in Victoria, we have the luxury of not having to really worry about output, but that is the biggest concern, isn't it? The output sometimes instead of the input or the learning.
Yeah, people will get caught up thinking that they've got to have all this evidence to show that their kids are learning. But I mean, I know in Queensland, all we have to do is be able to explain it in words. So if we can explain how we have noticed a child has progressed in what they've learnt, then that's enough. We don't need all these umpteen sheets of worksheets to present to them. That's not what it's about. Like, we know our own children, we're with them so much. We don't need our kids to prove it to us, because they're naturally proving it as we are doing things with them, rather than in a classroom. The teachers may not have that time and they've got someone else to answer to, so they have to collect all those worksheets and the kids have to produce. There's not enough time for learning.
No. And we have to remember, and I've spoken about this, I don't think on the podcast, but I've spoken about this in summit workshops, is that the parents or the teachers are producing that work, not even really for the government's sake. They're producing that work because they have a responsibility to report to the parents, to the child's parent, and say, hey, here's proof of what we've taught your child. And so we have a very different role when it comes to the registration and all that sort of stuff. Like you said, we know our kids. We don't have to show all this proof constantly. And I guess make their learning a chore by doing so.
Yeah.
Is
Definitely.
I love that you didn't have to. I love that you just did it naturally and didn't have to let anything go. I wish it had been that easy for me. So as you went in, you found your feet. Did anything change from your units, the way you approached unit studies with your kids?
Oh, definitely. So when all the different styles were being discussed through the groups and things, we tried them. We dabbled in different ones. And we just kept falling back to the unit studies. It's the one that just flows most well with our lifestyle, with the kids, and with being able to go deeper into things where we can explore it and move on when we're ready. But if we're not ready, we can just go deeper into so much of it and spend weeks and weeks on the same thing.
Yep.
And I think the way that we do it as a unit study, we do it in blocks. So some things I'll use a curriculum, some things I might just use like a book that we read, and the stuff that's in it will have a flow. And so I might go, all right, well, let's do the next four topics, and we'll just go, what else can we throw in to beef this up? Let's throw in, hands-on activity. Let's throw in some reading. Let's throw in, some videos, an excursion if that's available, like whatever it might be. We actually did some of the like Discovery of Australia, the Captain Cook type discovery. And when we were doing all that and, Sydney Cove and everything, we actually went on a trip to Sydney and we went on the replica Endeavour. We went over to Fort Denison and explored the little island where they used for like your military watch and stuff. We went and had a look at the cliffs and the area where the ship had apparently attempted to make landfall first up before it went into Sydney Harbour. And yeah, we got to just add so many things into this one topic, and we spent like 6 weeks on it.
But the learning, and that's where I guess it's a perfect example of your input versus output. You could have read some instructional pieces on that and asked them to regurgitate, but instead you just experienced it and could see that they had a better understanding and were more appreciative of the actual circumstances because they got to see it in real life.
Yeah, so we definitely preferred to do like a lot of the different things, whether it was reading or whatever it was. Like we would do nighttime reading for like an hour to an hour and a half each night, and it might be on a bit of math and something else usually, and that would often include our science or our history reading more than anything. Not so much literature. I've probably not done enough literature, but we'll set that aside. But yeah, so we did heaps of different things. Like we tried doing unschooling for 6 months and my son went stir crazy. We tried doing co-ops where we actually, I think we were attending like 3 co-ops in a week or something, and just complete burnout from too much out. We've done lots of different things. I did actually try the Ambleside Online and the full literature base, but that was too much for my kids and it didn't give enough other stuff, so we set that aside. But they did like some of that because they liked, some reading, just not that much of it, and they didn't like doing it on their own so much. So I think that's kind of how our unit study kind of morphed into some reading, some doing, some watching, and some outing type activities, where we often use a spine of something that we can read, and it might be something that will take 20-30 minutes to read through as we go through, and then we'll discuss it, or, whatever it is that we might add to it.
You said about your nighttime stories that they were so, I'm interested in this. So we do, our nighttime stories are usually like literature, but you said science and maths. Can you we do our science. We're researching volcanoes at the moment with my son. So we've got a lot of books that we're reading that are based around volcanoes, and obviously they're not, a literature story, most of them. But in terms of science and maths, do you nighttime reading? How did that go?
My kids actually loved Life of Fred. So we would
you've mentioned that before.
Yeah. So like obviously they were, we were grade 4 and 2, I think, when we really took to homeschooling after we'd had, a couple of months off or something as it was coming into Christmas. And when we started, I still wanted to start at the first book, even though they were a little bit older. So we flew through the first book in 20 minutes and that was done. And then we went on to the second books. we went on to the second book and we started doing like 2 chapters a night, and we got through that. And like as it's gone, we've just slowly slowed it down. We even bought the little characters that they can come with. So we had them. We would actually get out the hands-on manipulatives that they would discuss in the book. So in the first book, it's got, pencils. It talks about counting the pencils. So we actually got pencils out, laid them on the floor, did the same thing, copied the book. When it's had coins, whatever it might be, we'll get things out. And that just became part of our nighttime reading. And it was okay for a while when it was just, it was so easy we could just discuss it. And then it got to a point where it's like, all right, we're doing reading and we're doing math problems at 8 p.m.
That's what I was about to ask.
And funny enough, we're still there. But now it might sometimes be 9 or 10 p.m.
Oh, that's awesome. Anyone who doesn't know, Life of Fred is a resource that's basically a story-based resource where it teaches you through his life and things that happened to Fred, which he's got a very interesting life, maths concepts. So it's a really cool way.
For a 5-year-old university lecturer.
Exactly right. That's right. One thing I wanted to ask you about Life of Fred, this is just personal, guys, I'm just asking this while we're here, is how does it go? Because isn't it is it got American, instead of metrics and stuff, it's got the American values and that sort of stuff? System?
It actually does both.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, so it may not spend a lot of time on metric, but metric is, it's your groups of 10 anyway. We do it in everyday life.
Yep.
I don't think that we're missing anything by adding in the feet, inches and yards that we do. Yeah, I think it's definitely just added to and not taken from at all.
Oh, cool. Good. Might add that to my list of reading.
The coins were probably the hardest thing, and some of the, it went over some of the states at one point, and so we did have to get a map out so that we could follow what it was going on about when it was doing states. I think that might have been in like book E, possibly.
Okay.
E or F.
Yeah. It's been recommended a few times. So for those of you whose kids are probably not wanting to sit and it makes it a bit more entertaining, wouldn't it be? Is that the best way to describe it? It makes the maths a little bit more entertaining.
Yeah. And I find it's short. It is really good to do together. We do the reading part together. My kids do the problems on their own, but it's a good little story to do together as a family. It does mention some Christian things in it, so some people don't like it because of that. That doesn't bother me, so I'm not too worried about that stuff. What else would be in there? It does go all the way up to things like calculus and statistics, so it's got a lot of topics. So we're just about to start on the pre-algebra books, which incorporate science at the same time. So the first one has physics, so we're about to swap over our science studies on biology and jump over to do some physics ones for the next few months while we work through that.
We're going to leave our chat with Patricia there for today with a great explanation of how she uses Life of Fred to turn mathematics into family time. Join me on Thursday as we continue our chat with Patricia and dive into how she implements and runs unit studies in her homeschool. Thanks for joining us on the Fearless Homeschool Podcast. If you'd like to stay connected in between episodes, check us out on socials at Fearless Homeschool. And if you'd like to hear more about our Fearless Homeschool journey, sign up to our Fearless Family Fables newsletter. But don't forget to subscribe so that you're the first to know when a new episode drops. Because
Why do the